What's going on, guys? I'm back today with another video, and this is probably one of my most requested videos that I get asked all the time. And it's, can you put out a video of doing fascia release on an athlete entering peak week or is in peak week? So there's a lot of things that come to account when you actually do fascia release with an athlete in the sport of bodybuilding as they're entering peak week or in it as well. So first you have to identify if it's what category they are. Is it a bikini athlete, a physique pro? Is it a bodybuilder? Today we are working with an open bodybuilder today, and he is actually in peak week right now. So this session was done right in the middle of his peak week. So how did we approach this? What is it that we do? And as you saw the intro, the first thing you have to do is you have to assess the athlete, have them pose. Just the muscle always has a certain tone already, but when they pose, they get rock hard. You want to assess the skin. You want to see if you can still feel, the fatty lipid tissue. You want to feel if you can feel fat receptors, if you can feel fascia, if there's any water retention in the fascia. All that you should be able to identify. So especially if you're a veteran LMT that has worked with the sport of bodybuilders, and that's with any category, because they all have to enter peak week differently, and they all manipulate food, vitamins, supplements, water, sodium. There's so many things that go on during peak week for the athlete that their body is literally changing day to day, and their coach is monitoring all this. So as an LMT, what is it that we're doing today? We are working with an open bodybuilder doing fascia release, and after assessing the athlete, you can kind of tell where you need to start, which muscles you want to enhance. This guy is deeply shredded, so we're just working on little pinpoint areas to just help the muscle pop a little bit more. So we're not really focusing on traumatizing the tissue. We're not focusing on, bringing too much inflammation, because that's going to raise cortisol levels. We're working on just manipulating fascia. Today we started with the hamstrings. We did start with some scraping. I highly advise people to just start with stone if they're going to use scraping inside their fascia release treatment, just because stone will not traumatize the tissue. I started with a metal tool. I've been working with these tools for many, many years, so I understand the weight, the tension, and how to really guide that. And once we do that, then I start working with just my hand. I want to manipulate it. And even here, I'm assessing the situation after. But I went from metal to hand to stone, and then we assess the muscle. And I'm not going to show every single muscle that we assess during this session. Obviously, I'm breaking this down to 12 minutes, but this was a 1-hour treatment. But going back to fascia release, you want to focus on what the fascia actually really feels like. And it feels very gritty. So what we're looking for, at least what I am looking for, is that fine little grittiness. It kind of feels like sandpaper. You want to smooth that out as much as possible. When you smooth that out, then you want to push the lymph with some effleurage, and you want to push that towards the heart, as you see me doing that right there, just pushing that blood back to the body. So what that's going to do is just clean out the lymph, clean out any stagnation that's there. We want to keep that fascia as pliable as possible. Now, what is that going to do for the athlete while they're in peak week? Well, if you're familiar with the sport of bodybuilding, and this is for the LMTs, this video is primarily for the LMTs that do work with bodybuilders, they're going to carb load during peak week, and they're going to minimize water intake, but sometimes they might water load. So all this is going to be, you kind of have to shoot from the hip when you're working with these people, depending on how they're going to enter their peak week and what their coach has them doing. So ask a lot of questions, but it's gonna, as they carb load, it's gonna be able to stay right inside that muscle tissue, so they have that fullness and hardness without that water spilling over. And that's the key goal of doing fascia release during peak week. And some people will hear it be called, I want to do a water flush. There's some LMTs that call it, I'm doing a water flush. But it's essentially a fascia release treatment. They've just kind of devised it and manipulated that treatment in their own way, the way they like to work, which is completely fine, which is actually remarkable, knowing that a lot of people can do a lot of remarkable things just manipulating fascia. But and working up the spine here. And I'm not really looking on the belly of the tissue. His back is deeply shredded, so as I work close to the spine, I can see those muscle fibers just really just very prominent there. So what I like to do with the spine is I just like to work on attachment points. That spine, the more we can keep pliability along the spine, he's going to be able to move and pose without any restrictions. And here and some people will know this terminology here, I'm working along the Christmas tree line on that low back. Again, that Christmas tree line. And I'm just using my hands here. Now what I'm doing is I'm just trying to gain just the smallest amount of friction to release the fascia tension that might be holding on that low back, because bodybuilders, especially open bodybuilders, like to have a very detailed, crisp Christmas tree on that low back. So we want that to be as tight as possible, especially when they carb load and deplete water. So we want to flush all that out, as you see me doing some effleurage right there, by just moving everything that I've caused just slight inflammation on the fascia. And like I said, light inflammation. So what goes on in my mind is I'm kind of thinking about carving the body. I'm contouring the body. So we're going around the sticky issues, sticky areas, but also around the muscle bellies that we want to see just pop on the bodybuilding stage. So here we're going around that rear delt and really dividing the tricep as well. So from that rear delt to the tricep. And I even use a little bit of stone on this, just depending on how thick that tissue is. And some people have very thick skin and some people have thick fascia layering. So it's gonna be different from person to person, athlete to athlete. There's some times that I have to use elbows during peak week just because they're a little thicker. They have a whole lot more muscle tissue, but that doesn't mean I'm using elbows with like a lot of pressure. What we're trying to do is just move lymph out of there. All right, moving on to the legs right here. This is where I go into really deep detail of body contouring. So here I'm using the A-stem metal tool, and I'm going right around that VMO right there. So I'm really holding on to that VMO, pulling it apart, and really getting inside, scraping inside the detail of the tissue, that muscle, to contour it, to really get in those deep cuts. And then with my hand, really getting in there and flushing most of that stuff out. So I do my best to really, really understand how the muscle tissue feels and the fine grittiness that fascia feels just with the tip of my finger. And once I understand that, I will use the tool. And as you see, my left hand there is guiding where I need to scrape, and then I assess the tissue. So I look for the sticky areas, and this is very, very light work. It might not seem like light work just from the video. If someone is just watching this, you might think like, man, he's really digging his thumb in there, but I'm really, really not. This gentleman here, I have been working with during his prep. So he's been coming in weekly. So as he's been coming in weekly, we've been able to keep the muscle tissue pliable. And now today we can just work on the fascia. And that's why you can see that muscle just really sink in as I work on him. So again, returning back to fascia release, I really like to contour the muscle tissue. So around here, going around that VMO, using my fingertips, just really getting into the deep cuts of the muscle. We're trying to see exactly where each muscle lays. And I actually had him flex his quads before we actually do this, just so I can see where his details are, because everybody's quads are going to be different. Some people's are very prominent during the teardrop, some are on the outside quad. So, but once you know the layout, like the landmarks of the muscle tissue, then you can really start contouring it. And we really wanted to get those deep cuts right into that hip, and that's right up into that rectus femoris. So that's where we did some scraping. You'll see a little bit of redness there, but that's going to subside probably in like 30 minutes. So but again, I'm using the metal tool and then flushing everything out with just the fingertips. Moving into the diaphragm and the abdomen, I think this is a plus and a necessary during their prep. You can do it a little bit during their growth season if you can actually do that, but especially during their prep, especially during peak week, getting into that diaphragm and contouring the abdominal wall, I think is a plus. These guys are gonna be on stage for quite a while holding a pose. And if you're not familiar working with bodybuilders, go to a bodybuilding show, see what they actually go through, see what every category has to go through, because no matter if you're from bikini, figure, physique, women's bodybuilding, open bodybuilder, classic physique bodybuilder, they have to flex their entire body the whole time they're up there. So they're going to start breathing pretty heavy. So if you can keep that diaphragm relaxed and pliable, and even getting into the intercostals, it's going to help with oxygen flow very, very well. They're going to be able to twist and turn. You'll actually get to see how these guys pose on stage. So here we're just contouring the abdominal wall and fleshing some of that water out. Again, it's contouring and fleshing out that water out. And we're doing this just by manipulating the fascia wall. That's all we're doing, fascia. So not really doing a lot of issues on the muscle tissue. Again, his chest is deeply shredded, so we're using the metal. We're continuing to use the metal tool, and we're just working on the sternum right here. And what I'm looking at with the sternum is I'm actually looking to see if the muscle tissue fibers, those really deep cuts, actually go all the way through the muscle. We don't have to do anything much with the muscle, it's more with the fascia. So right on the sternum will actually help that chest pop out, and here I'm working on the intercostals. So again, understand what category you're working with, understand what they have to go through, ask 1,000 questions if you need to on what their peak week is going to look like. Again, some of these people carb load, some of them carb deplete, some of them water load, some of them don't drink much water. So it's all going to depend, and that's going to determine how the muscle tissue responds and how they change day to day during peak week. And that's what you have to adapt your technique, your massage technique, especially adapt your fascia. So I hope you like this. Subscribe and like to the channel, people. Go through all your mandatories there. Let's see the separation on those quads right there. Give me like an abs eye. Oh yeah, look at that detail in there. That's good. That's rock hard too. That's good. See an abdominal thigh. Nice. See the other thigh. You see all these lines feathering right in there, all the way through. Perfect. Let's see the back. Yeah, those hamstrings are popping. Deep, deep cuts. Good. Amazing. Nice, nice. See what that side chest looks like. Oh, that's a good quad sweep. Glute ham. Nice. Amazing. That is just amazing. How you feeling, bro?
Very good.
Very good, man. Another survivor, another person showing that you can get tissue work during peak week. And if you want to come through or want to learn more about how to do some tissue therapy with some bodybuilders as they enter peak week, just DM me and we can do some one-on-one chats here with the Torch Room Theory.